Hey friends, Ash here. Welcome back to Gents. Hope that you're well. In case you weren't aware, we are firmly in the age of the elixir fragrance. So much so that I have an idea that I want to do. I want to make a little fragrance short film, kind of like Lord of the Rings. You know how at the beginning they have the rings of power and they get handed out to the men, to the dwarves, to the elves, etc.
Keep it secret. Keep it safe.
Something like that, except instead of rings of power, it is elixirs of power. Fragrance, yeah, you get it.
You have no power here.
And I do actually want to do that. I think it'd be kind of sick. But for now, we're gonna put that on the back burner and we're gonna talk about yet another new elixir fragrance. And this one is from a clone house, because why let the designer brands have all the fun, right? And the one we're talking about is, of course, the new Rasasi Hawas Elixir. And I do want to shout out another YouTube channel called Fragaby. Hopefully I said that correctly. F-R-A-G-A-B-Y. Because he was actually the first one that kind of keyed everybody in on this fragrance even coming out. So shout out to him. So yeah, another new elixir, this one in the very popular Hawas line. Is it any good? That is what we hope to tackle today. I'll have this one linked in the description. I got mine from fragrancebuy.ca. It was about $51 or so, at least as of shooting this video. That is gonna change a little bit depending on conversion rate from Canadian to US, but yeah, roughly around 50 bucks, we'll say. And that does make sense. Usually when Hawas fragrances are first launched, they're a little bit pricier than your more typical Armaf, Lattafa fragrance world. So first off, let's go ahead and take a closer look at this beautiful presentation right here. Then we can start talking about the scent, what it smells similar to, and if it's any good at smelling similar to the fragrance that it smells similar to. Got it? Good. We begin with the box. On the front, we have the name of the fragrance. You have your size and concentration. It is an Eau de Parfum 100 ml size. Has that little snake skin kind of aesthetic around the Hawas name. Up on the top, you have some Arabic script. On one side, you have your QR code and sticker of authenticity. I pointed this out before, but I do so love how every single Middle Eastern brand makes sure to put a sticker of authenticity on there, and yet there's not like a single designer brand that chooses to do so, or at least not for the most part. On the back, you have a little bit of information and your concentration once again. And then on the bottom, you have your badge code and your ingredients. This bottle was manufactured December 2024. And here we have the bottle done in your typical Hawas style. This one with a gold painted exterior that is an absolute fingerprint magnet. There are a number of bottles that are kind of like this, that just pick up fingerprints like crazy. And I know that, you know, when it's completely clean, squeaky clean, it looks like a mirror, very reflective, it looks cool, but it never really stays like that, right? Because you have to pick the bottle up in order to spray it. So what ends up happening is your cool, reflective gold bottle ends up looking smudged and smeared and kind of gross. So not a huge deal at the end of the day, but I do kind of hate bottles that are like this. Just because it never looks nice unless you're constantly walking around with a cloth and then every time you pick it up and spray it on, you go, okay, nice, it looks better, but I gotta put it back like that. Don't want to touch it. Is it a big deal? Not really. Is it annoying? Kind of. So anyway, the bottle. On the front, you have the name of the fragrance. You also have the flanker name right there in the middle, Elixir. Nothing on the sides, nothing on the back. On the bottom, you have a little sticker, and then you have the typical cap with Rasasi on top. It does click into place. And I know that you know what time it is. It's time to give it a couple sprays. So here we go. Nice, solid atomizer. All right, let's start digging into Hawas Elixir and how it smells. Well, first, I guess, really quickly, let's talk about Hawas, the line. Just real quick. In case any of you are unaware for any reason, Hawas is one of the most popular, largest clone fragrance lines out there. And until recently, there weren't actually that many fragrances in the line. There was the original Hawas, which has been very popular ever since it was first released, but after that, there wasn't really a whole heck of a lot that came afterwards. But here recently, they have really started to ramp up how many different Hawas fragrances there are. So there was Hawas Ice, and then Hawas Fire. You see how that kind of goes. Hawas Black, also an upcoming Hawas Pink, now Hawas Elixir. So it is obvious that Rasasi has decided that this is going to be one of their big lines of fragrances, really the main line. And as we all know, the Elixir fragrance is one of the biggest, best ones. So how does this one smell? What's it similar to? If somehow you've made it all this way into the video and you still have no clue how this smells, what it could smell similar to, well, the name, the color scheme kind of gives it away. Le Male Elixir. What a surprise. And we will also be comparing this a little bit to Lattafa's The Kingdom, because that one is about half the price right now of the Rasasi, and it's Lattafa, and Lattafa's pretty popular, so figured why not. All right, note breakdown of Hawas Elixir. Depending on where you look, it is different. There are actually a couple of different note breakdowns out there. First one is from iFragrance Official, which has in the opening, off the top, mugwort, which is interesting, and also bergamot and spearmint. In the mid, it has dark chocolate, lavender, and benzoin, and then in the base, musk, tonka, and vanilla. Which, if that is indeed the note breakdown, that is an awkward note breakdown, very odd. Other places online, you can see this note breakdown, which to me makes a little bit more sense. It is off the top, lavender and mint, then vanilla, benzoin in the mid, honey, tonka, and tobacco in the base. Why does that make more sense? Well, because that note breakdown that's basically Le Male Elixir's note breakdown, right? So yeah. So of those two note breakdowns, I think it's probably just the note breakdown that's the same as Le Male Elixir, but who knows? I wanted to give you both because both are currently out there. So how does it open? Well, interestingly enough, it has a little bit of a similarity to how a lot of the Le Male Elixir clones on the market open up. Kind of like Lattafa's The Kingdom over here, it does lean a little bit more toward that lavender and mint off the top than Le Male Elixir does. So I'm gonna give this one just a couple sprays here, give this little dude a couple sprays right here. Now, if you don't compare these side by side, if you just spray this on, you're gonna think, oh, Le Male Elixir, spot on, absolutely fantastic. It's really when you do the side by side that the little bits of differences do come out to play. So with this one, Le Male Elixir, when you first spray it on, I mean, 15 seconds in, you get a little bit of that lavender and mint, but really it focuses on that honeyed vanilla, that tonka, that deep sweetness, that richness, even in the opening. That comes through pretty strongly in Le Male Elixir. Whereas with Hawas Elixir, you get more of that kind of aromatic freshness when you first spray it on. So a bit green and kind of like a sweet mint, a little bit more, I'd say, sugary in the way the sweetness comes across off the top in comparison to Le Male Elixir. Le Male Elixir initially gonna be a little bit deeper, a little bit richer, a little bit darker. And Lattafa's The Kingdom does that too, as far as what Hawas Elixir does. But I would say that Hawas Elixir is a bit heavier, a bit deeper in comparison to Lattafa's The Kingdom, even right off the top. So while they do share that similarity in the sense that they have more of that aromatic lavender mint coming across, less of that like honeyed tonka vanilla in the initial opening compared to the real deal, they do that same thing but differently, if that makes any sense. Lattafa's The Kingdom does come across a little bit lighter than Hawas Elixir initially. So between these two, in the opening, Hawas Elixir, yeah, a little bit heavier, a little bit deeper, but not quite so much as Le Male Elixir. Hawas Elixir is more like a sweet vanilla mint with aromatic aspects along the edges. So in the opening, if you do spray these on side by side, you can tell a difference between the two. But if you have this just by itself, you're gonna think Hawas Elixir. So when I first got this in, sprayed it on a tester strip, and I wasn't contrasting and comparing, I was like, spot on. It's only not spot on when you start going back and forth. Now, as these dry down, one of the two clones does get noticeably closer to the real deal, and it is this one. Hawas Elixir, as you head through the mid, gets very, very close to Le Male Elixir. There's still a slight difference, which we'll get to here in a second, but really, really similar. And Lattafa's The Kingdom is still good. It's still a really nice alternative to Le Male Elixir, very similar, but not as close as Hawas Elixir is. The Kingdom ends up staying a little bit fresher. Again, not quite as much depth to it. You don't get that like decadent honey, tobacco, vanilla, benzoin mix like in Le Male Elixir here. So while The Kingdom is close, just a little bit fresher, not quite as deep, not quite as much depth. Hawas Elixir, closer, but the main difference is it has almost a, like a fruity sort of sweetness to it. Not like a super sugary sweetness once you hit the mid, but it has more of this almost like semi-dark fruity sweetness, almost like a lightly stewed fruity kind of aspect, like a reduced fruit. Like if you had a pan and you were reducing a fruit there, and it gets that kind of like sticky, deep, but still fruity sweetness. It's got that kind of going on as you head through the mid into the dry down. And then I would say in the far dry down, that Hawas Elixir over here, maybe a little bit more of like a fizzy sort of vanilla, not quite as honeyed in how it comes across as compared to the original Le Male Elixir. Still really, really close and kind of splitting hairs. You gotta go back and forth, but you do get a little bit of a difference there as far as how it dries down. Again, I think that Le Male Elixir, between all three of them, is the one that has the most richness to it. But it's not a crazy, crazy difference between the two. It's not something where you go back and forth and you're like, oh my God, like this is a 10 out of 10 and this is a 4. It's just, it has a little more of a deep aspect to it. One other difference between the two is that Hawas Elixir has almost a faint amber woodiness once you hit that dry down. So whereas Le Male Elixir is gonna be more the benzoin, the honeyed vanilla, those deeper sweet notes, Hawas Elixir still has a good amount of sweetness. It just has that additional amber woody sort of aspect to it, which will set it apart slightly if you're smelling them side by side. Now let's talk about performance. It better perform. It is a Hawas and it's named Elixir. It better be strong. Unequivocally, Hawas Elixir is stronger than the Kingdom. So this one, if you're looking for the strongest of the bunch, ain't it. I would say for, 25 bucks, some places you can get it for under that. This is probably your best bang for your buck as far as a Le Male Elixir clone goes. Put up against this one anyway, for sure. But in terms of performance, this one is the weakest of the three, at least off my skin. And in terms of how it comes across, it's gonna be the least deep, the least rich, a little bit fresher though. So maybe if you're after that, it's not like crazy fresh or anything, it's just a little bit more so than these. So let's just talk these two now. In terms of performance, Hawas Elixir, just as good as Le Male Elixir. And actually in a side-by-side when I was wearing both of these the last couple days, Hawas Elixir, a little bit stronger. Great longevity, very strong as far as the projection goes. So about what you would expect. As strong as Hawas Black? No, but really strong? Yes. And with that, of course, seasonality, pretty much the exact same as Le Male Elixir, right? I mean, fall, winter, daytime, nighttime. For a lot of people would lean maybe a little bit more toward evening use, but I think either one. Is it worth 50 bucks? That's gonna be less than half what you're gonna have to pay to pick up Le Male Elixir. So when you compare it that way, it's a pretty good deal. Like I said, bang for buck, you probably wanna go for the Kingdom here, or maybe even Fragrance World's Urban Man Elixir, which is also cheaper and really well done. If you don't care about that, you just want the strongest, the best alternative, then that's probably gonna be this right here for you. It packs a punch, it smells really close, just with those little differences that I mentioned before. And really the worst part of it is the bottle. So, I mean, when you consider it that way, it's a pretty good deal. Just, I hate the fingerprints. Ugh. It's gonna get you right in that wheelhouse of Le Male Elixir with very good quality, very good performance. And actually in the air, in the mid and dry down, that's when this really shines. I think the opening is fine, but for me, that's the weakest part of the fragrance. Not in terms of projection, just in terms of how it comes across. Especially in a side-by-side, I prefer the opening of Le Male Elixir. I think it just smells a little bit nicer overall, a little bit more my style. But really quickly, when this starts to dry down, especially through the mid, into the dry down, it smells really good when you catch whiffs of it through the day. And so for me, that's the strongest part, the best part of the fragrance, which thankfully is the longest lasting part. And it's not that the opening smells bad, it doesn't, and I actually prefer the opening of this to Lattafa's The Kingdom, but I think that overall, if I was gonna rank out like how this goes head to head, I like the opening more here, and the mid and dry down, you could kind of make a case for either one. A little bit different, but both smell fantastic. So there we go, Hawas Elixir. I would imagine some people are gonna be like, oh great, another Le Male Elixir clone, because to be frank, they're a little bit late on that. Armaf has one, Lattafa has one, Fragrance World has one. There's a lot of different alternatives to this at this point, so they're coming out with it a little bit late. If they came out with it like a year ago, at that point, I think a lot of people would be really interested. Maybe they missed the boat a little bit, so that could be a drawback as well. But like I said, if you're just looking for the strongest one, the best one, check it out. So there we go, guys. Hawas Elixir. Like I said, I got mine from Fragrance Buy, about 50 bucks. As time goes on, maybe that drops a little bit, but as of right now, that's looking like, you know, looking around about what it's going for. Some places are actually asking a decent amount more, so, you know, don't pay anything more than that. I want to thank you all for hanging with me here today. Stay safe out there, guys. Take care of yourselves. See you tomorrow with another fragrance video. See you later.